Oh, hello folks here on YouTube. Just on a little walk here. Got my kids. Of course, my dog is tormenting my daughter as always. Beautiful day for a walk before the weather gets too hot down here. And today I want to talk about this word partner. Partner, right? And it's been used as a substitute for spouse, okay? I think it's one of the most absurd things that has become popular in the English language for a while now. And I hear a lot of people using it. A lot of people, regardless of religious affiliation, political affiliation. It does seem to be used more by those who are on the left end of the political spectrum, which I find equally bizarre, because if you take a look at the, for example, I think it was the 1990s especially, early 2000s, you had many homosexual marriages kind of front and center in the news, right? So many conservative Christian organizations politically tried to suppress homosexual marriages or stop them outright. They did not want them to be allowed to be married. They would not want to accept their marriages. So one of the solutions offered by some of these conservative Christian groups was to have like civil unions or partnerships, essentially, so that they could not have the recognition of a marriage. Now, I go back to I think a South Park episode that kind of made fun of this situation. It was really funny. It had this conservative politician saying, "Hey, you guys can't be husband and husband, wife and wife, or married, but you could be buddies, you know?" And it showed how one-sided and forceful these conservative Christians were about imposing their ideas about marriage. They essentially wanted to monopolize on what it means to be a married couple, right? So I find it funny that in the modern era, especially those on the left, seem to be pushing this word partner. They don't talk about their husband or wife. They talk about their partner. I think it's completely absurd, personally, because I believe a marriage is either it's a somewhat spiritual union or it is not. Now, of course, some of you are not religious. I understand. I'm not really speaking to you if you are not of a religious persuasion, of any religious persuasion, because some people take their pair bonding, if you want to put it that way, as something that is a spiritual union other than just a physical union, okay? So, me, again, being more of a Germanic pagan, I like some of these older notions, whether it's the old Indo-European, Celtic, Germanic ideas of, say, hand fasting, for instance. Hand fasting where you tie the knot. Little celebrations where you drink mead on that full moon after a wedding, the honeymoon, right? So I see a sacredness to this union between husband and wife especially, right? Now, looking at this from the modern perspective, there are various couples out there. A partnership is something between lawyers, something between business partners. It's almost like a partnership is intended to be dissolved when it's no longer useful. And of course, some people who are married could say the same thing about marriage. Okay, it's no longer serving a use for one or both parties. therefore you could say it's just a partnership, right? I'm not really a big fan of that being applied to a union that kind of is sacred, where you bring new life into the world, you raise a family, especially as human beings, where raising a family takes a long time to do it right. Now, many of you know, I know many of you have examples of terrible families, and families aren't perfect. They're often dysfunctional. However, when you take it as something sacred, a relationship to your spouse, to your wife, for example, and I will use this to reference my experience here. And I'm not saying by all means I'm adhering to some sort of dogmatic religious view of this. But when you overall see it as something sacred and to be nurtured and kept, you try to avoid its dissolution. Its dissolution, when you break apart your marriage, you kind of break apart of yourself as well, okay? Because you are united in this. So, a partnership is not something to be, is not to me a good substitute for a marriage, put it bluntly. That's my stance on this. And we have to ask we have to take a look at the other side of this as well, and people try to define marriage. Notice there's an awful lot of lawyers and government and institutions and laws regarding marriage. Now, they're usually based on the predominant religion of whatever culture, but nobody really starts to ask the question, when it comes to consenting adults, why is government involved in marriage in the first place? Why is a secular entity, primarily, involved in the regulation of who can pursue a religious, spiritual bond with somebody else in the form of matrimony, right? I mean, you see these issues with polygamists in Utah, and whether it was gay marriage later on. It's none of our business. It really isn't. Especially when you're in a free society where you claim to value religious freedom. It's not my business. If it's two consenting adults and they want to call their union a marriage or whatever, maybe it is to them. If they feel like it's a spiritual bond, we could argue how we disagree with. I might say, like, if I were a fundamentalist Christian, I might say, well, I don't think this relationship is a marriage. Well, again, that's your religious point of view. Do I have to have government come in and regulate that? Who profits from that? I mean, are the courts, do they profit from this? I don't think it's beneficial necessarily to society to hyper-regulate marriage. Then it all becomes about if they dissolve their relationship, where money goes, how it's shared, resources are split up. You know what I'm talking about. So, yeah, I think the whole notion that marriage is the same as a partnership, or a partnership is a marriage, is nonsensical. There are elements of a partnership within a marriage, yes. But a marriage is not a partnership. It's just a bunch of bullshit, to tell you the truth. So, I don't know. That's just something that's been on my mind lately. Seems like every time I watch a video these days and they start talking about this, hear somebody say his or her partner, my partner. I'm like, okay. You guys open up an ice cream shop together? What the fuck? They should just say my spouse, my wife, my husband, whatever it is they want to call them. It's just a trend in the English language I think is reflective of how, I don't want to say secular, but kind of stupid or naive people have become when it comes to relationships and what they really mean. How self-centered people have become, how isolated we have become. So we've gotten to that point where we don't really take these things seriously because it involves another person. We're used to being in our little cubicles and our little places and spaces saturated by social media and isolation and not connecting to real people in real ways. And yeah, that's a different story for a different day. I'm gonna enjoy this walk and check on my dog, so you all have a great day.